Well, I've been a member of the House of Lords for 20 years, and I have focused over the 20 years on things like education, civil society, and so on and so forth. But in recent times, I've had front bench duties to do for the Labour Party, because I should just say that I'm a member of the Labour Party.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And front bench duties for digital, culture, media and sport. I was the shadow minister before the election, and also shadow minister for Wales, because I'm from Wales. I am a Welshman. So all of that. But since COVID, which stopped all of that, I have picked up in a new role. I've been concentrating on digital and communications on the one hand, and I've been elected by the British Parliament to go to Strasbourg as part of the delegation of this Parliament to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, which brings all 46 countries of Europe together to talk about mutual problems related to, and these are, to answer your question, these are human rights, the rule of law, democracy. So that's what I'm interested in now, more than anything else, yeah.
Yeah, and I have been working in the Council of Europe for quite a while now, for around a year. If I go this winter, is going to be my 5th time going. And yes, it's the common ground for us. And I know some of the goals Ukrainian delegation is pursuing in their presence in the Council of Europe. But I was wondering what are the main things that British delegation focuses on, because as they have left the EU with Brexit, it might be very interesting. What are they looking to achieve as being part of this organization?
I mean, the Council of Europe, of course, is quite different from the European Union, which was more about economics and politics, whereas this is the universal support for the Declaration of Human Rights and the United Nations and for the rule of law. So, and Britain pretty much helped to set it all up. So I'm very interested in those particular subjects. And as far as Britain is concerned, one of our big problems, and I think it is, I mean, you will confirm this to me, it's migration is the big subject of the day. And in Britain we have a coast and people come in small boats. In Ukraine you don't have quite the same thing, but you do have the border with Russia, the border with Poland, the border with other countries. So crossing borders is one of the big things, and therefore migration is a big subject, and I'm on the Council of Europe's Migration Committee, and I think that's where we met, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's a very interesting topic right there, because I think nowadays pretty much everyone has some opinion about migration and the policies that their government should pursue in terms of limiting migration or letting it, fostering even more. But with Ukraine, I think not many people know that there were actually a lot of black people coming to study in cities like Kharkiv, my city, because we have very nice universities and they're pretty cheap for the people who can't afford going to Europe but would like to get studying, because Ukraine has quite a good quality of studying. And yeah, I was wondering, as a labor lord, what are the measures you think your government should take, whether it should limit migration or whether it should be the same, whether it's on the right track?
Well, I've been a member of the Council of Europe for 20 years, and nearly all of that, certainly in the last 15 years, we've had a conservative government with a very conservative understanding of migration. And they have wanted to stop people coming and to put a cap on the numbers and so on. And actually they have, haven't put their best energy into putting the United Nations Convention of 1951 into force. Because that convention says that everybody has a right to seek, to be a refugee, to ask for shelter. Not everybody is entitled to have it, but because they haven't dealt with all of that, the previous government has allowed 70,000 people to go into the waiting list and has had to accommodate them in hotels. And it's terrifically expensive to keep them there. So we've got a problem. So my government, because that's what you asked me about, Vladimir, my government is dealing first of all with the 70,000 people in hotels and trying to get them processed to decide which ones have entitlement to stay and which ones should be deported. And the longer it takes, the harder it is. You know, of those people who came, 60% of them have been more than 6 months in hotels, and 30% more than 12 months in hotels. Well, the longer it goes, the harder it is to do the assessment, and the more costly it is for the national budget. Think what we could be spending all that money on. So it is a tricky area, and I'm very glad that I've recently been re-elected, because you have to be elected to go onto the delegation, to go back to Strasbourg, and shortly I'll be taking up my position again and arguing this case all over again.
Yeah. To me, it's pretty clear, though, that migration, healthy migration, like Ukrainians who come in, other nations, just brings in a lot of benefits for the country. It improves the economy and raises a lot of money. But I was interested to hear your take on illegal migration, whether we should be allowing people to come in illegally.
Well, I think, well, first of all, let me deal with the people who come from Ukraine, because the Conservative government always pointed to that, proving that they were in favor of migration. There's a very large number of Ukrainians here. But there are two things that make Ukrainian migrants quite different from the others. Number one is that they come and live with families and are accommodated and given opportunities to integrate. For most other migrants, that isn't the case. They go into hotels and are kept there until they're assessed. And secondly, the Ukrainians who come, the large majority of them are just waiting for the war to be over so they can go home again. And again, that's different from the migrations that we're thinking about now. They're coming because there's famine in Africa, or because there's political persecution, or their religion is not acceptable, or whatever they're fleeing from. And yes, they do bring, and I believe that personally. I know so many people who come to this country from other countries, and they contribute hugely to what's happening in this country, and positively. But they still have to be, as they arrive, we have to find homes for them. We have to find money to keep them. We have to offer them work and so on. And at a time when the economy is not doing very well, it can be quite difficult for politicians to allow that to happen. Yes.
And you have also told me that you're dealing with digital questions.
Yes. Yes.
It's interesting, right? Because many people looking at older people think that they don't really have much idea about digital digital stuff. This is what actually first time you told me that you're dealing with digital stuff. I remember my face. I was like that's very interesting. How can you do that?
Well, that's a very good question. But what we discovered in one of our reports, the digital committee that I was on, a select committee, was that young people too are rather limited in their uses, their understanding of digital.
Yeah, I think so.
That is, what young people use digital for is what they want, like streaming and keeping in touch, social media and stuff like that. But in terms of the skills needed to develop computer science, they are as much out of the picture as us older people half the time. So, and as we've discovered looking at our economy, in the future, we're going to need a much more highly skilled workforce, not just streaming and listening to their favorite music. We need them to compute and to build computing systems. And they are as bad as us older people. But what us older people have managed over the years also is to understand that the very best technology is wonderful to have as long as it's used for the purposes that it's available for. Whereas what happens is that in times of war, you get, for example, you get governments and politicians and armies taking the technology and applying it to drones, for example, and computerized warfare and cyber attacks. I mean, the digital field lends itself to violence and armed conflict as much as it does to helping us live our daily lives better. Now, those are the questions I'm interested in. That's my interest in the digital, the ethical. I want science to help the world to become a better place. But those who are in the struggle for power want the technology to help them get more power and more influence. Russia against Ukraine is one example.
But with digital part of our lives, I feel like the main concern that it is incredibly hard to control how it is all developing, because as we make all the efforts we can to limit or to limit all the harm that it can bring, it will produce 10 more ways that it can
you're quite right. You're
change our lives completely.
You're absolutely right. And when I think, for example, we just got a new Act of Parliament in Britain called the Online Safety Act. It took us 5 years to develop it.
What is it about?
It's all about protecting people from the worst things that happen through technology. It's keeping people safe when they're online. That's what it's about. Online Safety Act. But the point is, it took us 5 years to produce it, a further year to produce the regulatory powers that will control its use. And by the time we're doing all that, the technology will have advanced so that what we've taken 6 years to do will not be very useful. It'll have been overtaken by events. And I just yearn to have people from within the technology field who understand computers because it's their daily work.